Well, gents, thanks again. It's our annual get-together. I think I've you guys knew each other, but sort of introduced Elliot into this notorious threesome here that we seem to be able to get together at SDTS all the time. So I appreciate your time this morning, just kicking it off. I wanted to cut into a couple things this morning, but one in particular. Each of you have had a really amazing year behind you from where we were this time about last year. It's a little earlier in the season right now. And I want to get your perspectives as CEOs of rapidly emerging companies in the digital, in the surgical side of things. What is different today than a year ago? And what, as a CEO, are you having to navigate according to your board, according to your own instincts, and according to your people? So that's what I want to cut into. And Kurt, you first with EndoQuest. You've made some incredible leaps over the last year with that platform. So you've got so much experience. What's different this year, and what are you looking for?
You know, the single biggest thing for me is the team that we finally brought together. It's very difficult to bring the caliber of people that you need to stand up an advanced robotic platform. It's not something that's been around for many years where you're going to go, well, I'm going to go tap on this guy, tap on that. So we finally were able to put an amazing team together, thanks to you and my kind of network. But I'm so proud of the team that we have put together, and it allows me as a CEO to actually focus on the strategic side, the financing side, the board side, the investor side, strategic side, again, from acquirers or potential partners, where before I was deep under the, just under the hood and just trying to fix it, where now I can actually stand up and do my job as a CEO. So that's really the single biggest thing.
Yeah. And how about the climate? You know, we're watching the public markets sort of figure out where things are going, and that generally influences the venture people and the money available. We've watched big tech appropriately downsize, and that was long overdue. What are you seeing from your perspective, as much as you can share, on how are these markets appearing to you moving forward?
Yeah, I don't know if you were at JP Morgan this year. It was ugly. I mean, I raised around in 2008, so it reminds me of the 2008 days where you have to see 70 venture capital to get 5 of them to engage. Well, there's no longer 70, as you know. There's probably 25 or 30, but I think I talked to every one of them. And then you talk to strategics, because the strategics are more actually up for investments. They're looking for investments because they all now have venture arms. And so I met with all the strategics. What you hear on the venture side is doom and gloom. The next year is going to be rocky. We're holding on to our money. Well, we like you though, wink, wink. But what you also hear, and this is fact, I heard JP Morgan, was that the last 6 months, the term sheets that have been issued have had average of 50% discount on the last round of financing. That's like ridiculous discount. So that was the other thing that was a wake-up call for me, looking and listening to all this. But again, the good news is the money's there. That's the best news, because 2008, the money wasn't even there, right? So the money's there. They're just being very picky. They're being very choosy about who they want to. And then the last thing was late stage. They want to be more in the late stage, right? It's like, again, we like you, but so I didn't hear a single no, we're not interested. It's just that it's ugly and it's going to be difficult.
And Todd, you've just made a recent executive move. So you had stood up Active, its first CEO for the most part, and then now I've gone over to Minerva. So what have you seen? And again, early days at Minerva, and it's a publicly traded company, so you can only say so much right now. But as you looked at Active, as you left them in really good hands and with the Manisha and the team, what have you noticed in the last year?
First of all, thank you, Joe. I'm really proud of the situation with the team and the great leadership that Manisha brings to the organization and the board. What I noticed is the environment that we're in, the hospital environment. So even when technology is ready to go and being utilized in hospitals themselves right now weren't sure what they could buy and when they can buy. Things that are a 3-month product life cycle, a 6-month product life cycle, I was hearing that it was 12 to 18 months to get on the docket in a VAC committee. And hospitals were working on 2019 budgets because they haven't all been together to put the new budgets together since with COVID. If you're an incumbent in a hospital, you were in really good shape, which is good so you don't lose your business when you're an incumbent. When you're someone new, whether it's new being Active Surgical or Minerva Surgical, or whether it's new being Boston Scientific and Medtronic, is still the same weight. The incumbents were there, people weren't ready to make switches. What I've seen though, which is interesting, and I do agree, it's been, I think the VC world I think they're preaching doom and gloom, but I actually think it's more of I think they're loving it and they're enjoying it, because the best venture capital firms are stable, are strong, there's a lot of money, and by preaching doom and gloom, they can get down rounds.
So they're negotiating.
Yeah, it's a negotiation, but they're still wonderful. And we have had a wonderful board I was in and active and still part of, a great group of people that are always there to support your company. I do think what I've seen though is the truth of that is a lot of the venture capital firms we're keeping our money for our portfolio companies that we really believe in, just in case. So we want to make sure they're stable. I have seen that every company, I don't care who you are, you need to go stretch your runway. If you tell me you're 18 months, great, go to 24. If you tell me you're 24, go to 30. You have to stretch your runway and demonstrate that you can do it. And I think the leadership teams and the groups that are demonstrating they can do that are going to be the ones that are going to be around for a while.
And Elliot, I hate to do it to you, but you're the new kid on the block here with these vets here. He's got.
It's okay. Gray hairs are going to come in. Don't worry.
Thank you. I shouldn't have shaved.
There's a lot of ways to interpret the good-looking guy at the end. So yeah.
I'm leaving it at that. I mentioned that on LinkedIn. I'm like, he's really 60. He just.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But you've brought out Innovis. You put together the sales team. You got 1 year under your belt now, and we were chatting about it last night. What have you seen as a CEO now with new experience, and how do you view the U.S. market, especially?
Yeah, it's interesting because we have a slightly different buying profile compared to the guys that are selling devices, because we're selling simulators, so they don't tend to sit in GPOs or anything like that. So we go for this sort of middle-out adoption. So we're going to the clinicians, introducing the technology to them on the ground. We effectively, as you say, have been building a business in the US for the last year. We're a very robust business in the UK, market leaders there. But we still had to take this middle-out approach of going into the clinicians, introducing them to technology, who on the whole have never heard of us, and then go and get buy-in from their residents and then the people with the purse strings as well. So it's a similar thing in that we have a 12 to 18 month sales cycle. Can you bring that down? Yes. In the current environment, we're actually seeing that's seemingly shortened. And the reason being is there's all this backlog of surgical training that didn't go on in COVID, and that's still having impact even today. So that, I think, has certainly been a benefit to us. I just want to go back to the point around the financing as well. So we raised some capital last year, which we're deploying at the moment. But you're always having these conversations. What we're finding is those later stage businesses, or later stage finances, are coming to us and saying, we think that you have a business that's built on good fundamentals, and so we'd like to deploy our later stage capital here. And that's been a really interesting conversation for us, because we are a profitable business that's been growing for 10 years. We bring in outside capital when we want to go a bit faster, which we've recently done. But we're always tempering that with the levers within the business to make sure, yes, we're not just running ourselves off a cliff, because as well as those conversations are intentioned from the later stage investors, there's a big difference between we like the sound of investing in you and then actually getting that deal over the line.
Kurt, you brought it up, believe, we're going into down rounds now. And are they egos and pride that are going to get in the way with some of these venture people and with some of these entrepreneurs and with some of these existing investors? Because that's always been, yeah, we're going to raise, but it's going to be a down round. I'm like, gosh, isn't all oxygen good? So should we be ready for down rounds, since public markets reprice themselves every day, but venture markets sometimes lag a year or two?
It's the single biggest advice I give a startup CEO. Don't get wrapped around valuations and down rounds and focus on building value. If you believe in your cause, sometimes you have to take a half step back to take 2 steps forward. Perfect case was SurgiQuest. We had 2008, I had a down round, and I got diluted, but my next round was 2.5x up. So, you make it up. As long as you believe in the cause, as long as you're believing the company, the value you're building, don't get, and that's I'm telling you, Joe, you're absolutely right on. It's the single biggest thing that is a downfall of most startup CEOs, and the venture capital community doesn't deal with it very well, right? Because they're saying, like, look, here are the facts. here's why. Now, I agree with both of these guys. It's still money's out there, which is good news, and they're going to use every tactic to get you. But if you have to play your cards right, but don't get wrapped up around valuation. I think it's just single biggest advice I give people is just it's really short-sighted.
And is a down round or valuation in that earlier round as critical as the later round as we look at that, right? Because it's a 9-inning game. And if you're down in the first or second inning, third inning, does it really matter? Talk to me at the 9th inning.
I think it's funny. I think it mattered.
I knew he'd take the baseball analogy.
I understand it. All this other stuff I don't understand. I'm not sure it's necessarily the first inning or the second inning or A round to a D round to a C round. I think it's the year we're in. I mean, so 3 years ago, you talk to a venture capital and say, well, you're coming with a flat round or a down round. You're actually struggling. The fact that we're still giving you money is because someone believes in you. Okay, so we give everyone money. Now the people that are getting flat rounds to slightly down rounds are the companies that are going to survive, and those that were getting down rounds 3 or 4 years ago aren't going to be around anymore. So I think today people will take a down round. If you have money in hand and you have a business plan that you can grow and you can scale your business, you should take it. Still try to get the best that you can. In 2 years or 3 years, no one's going to, my opinion, I don't think people are going to look at you and say, oh, you did a down round 2 or 3 years ago. But you're selling a story right now. Well, look how we're commercial, we're in hospital, we're making a difference in patients' lives. I agree with you, what went through in 2008. There's money there. I don't think the down round will be frowned upon like it has been in the past. And I'm not saying it should have been. It was just so much money and people were just throwing money away based on concepts. We just invest in AI or we invest in digital, or it doesn't even matter if there's data behind it.
Just be careful though, I agree with you 100%. The other piece of the equation that's really important, it's actually more important than valuation, is the terms of the term sheet.
Yeah.
And if you've been around long enough, some of these guys get really interesting about the language they use in the terms and all these preferences and all these different, which is actually worse than the valuation itself. So, I'd rather have a clean, black and white term sheet that's market and deal with the valuation than have a decent valuation, but because to your point, that's what's going to hurt you in the future rounds. And it's just that to me is the other piece you have to really be aware of.
You started the question with the world of digital that we're in, and I think it's those last sort of 2.5 years that we went through, there was just this explosion in digital in our space, so in surgery specifically, surgical technology, digital platforms, and there was a lot of hype going and a lot of money pouring in. And I think one of the interesting parts of this question that we're having around down rounds and further funding is actually those businesses that have actually got a platform that has good fundamentals and good intrinsic value. They're the ones that will be sitting there going, we're actually pretty confident here, because even if we do have to take a down round, I mean, bear in mind the worst type of down round is you've walked off the field because you've run out of money. Mm-hmm. So that's the very worst kind. Let's avoid that at all costs. Sure. But those ones that do have to take a down round, if they must, that will be confident to do that are the ones that are saying, we actually know we've built something that's got real good fundamentals behind it, has great intrinsic value, and we've got a very clear understanding of where it's going to add value and who's going to buy it. And I think that's an important thing to think about. So if you've got that technology behind you, I think you can be quite confident in the market that you'll find the money you need.
Yeah, and I tell you, the only other thing I want to tell you about JP Morgan, digital. Last few years was all robotic, right? It's now about digital and the world of digital, which is good for you and good for me a little bit, I think, because we're still put ourselves under the digital umbrella. But that was all. Everybody's like, we're heavily investing in this area. We got plenty of money in that area. And you see that dynamic was going on. And before I forget, the other part of the whole term sheet and valuation is the partnership with the venture firm. That's the other thing that people don't realize. They're going to be on your board. So I'd rather take a little less valuations and maybe a little funkier terms but the firm that I believe in and I've worked with, that they're going to come into my board and they're going to add value and be a partner to me, versus somebody who's a big name that just going to be absolutely monsters and just going to take over your entire boardroom. You know what I mean? And so that's the other thing I want to make sure I mention, because those are the three things that I always tell people. As a matter of fact, I think that the partnership is just as important as anything, because you got to live with these guys. You know what I mean? And it could be really difficult in a boardroom if you don't see eye to eye and don't believe in the cause.
So to that point, Kurt, there's a lot of non-medtech money that did come in the last couple of years, and they were technologists. They were they saw the digital promise. And again, I think digital is the solution, but the timeline has changed. I think it's been pushed out a lot longer than we were all romantically wrapped around sort of the concept. But with that, this new money that came in that took a bit of a beating over the last couple of years because they just didn't understand the investment community, the way to market, et cetera. Would you take, I shouldn't say this, we'll always take money.
Good question, go
but
ahead.
Taking money from a non-medtech venture team and bringing non-medtech venture people onto your board, what's the liability there? Do you have a scenario there?
Yeah, I think our early stage investors are more generalists. They're regional investors in the UK. Generalist investors, healthcare and tech are two of their verticals. But in that scenario, you have to really know, you have to be the person bringing the expertise. I think you have to really know what you're doing. I think in that situation, if you've got a core team that have empathetic insight, so they've either come from years in the industry or they're physicians who are solving a problem for their colleagues, that will really help, because the VCs can then sit back and go, these people really know what they're doing. Yes, they're bringing the money, but they can bring sort of the other things that VCs would want to bring. So can they bring their network? Can they bring some out of sector? We spoke about this last year actually at this very event. Can they bring some out of sector expertise, which actually can in these situations have a lot of value? So we find that from our early stage investors. From the medtech perspective, they let us be the experts in the room, and then we tap into them when there's things that we need that's sort of outside of sector, and that's what.
And you've got an interesting proposition because you're already making money. Like, you're really a unique prospect. In fact, when we chatted about it last year, the VCs didn't know what to do with you because you were making money. So you've got an interesting,
we actually, to the point of late stage investors, we keep going beyond different investment categories of where we fit in the sweet spot. So it has been for us, it's actually sometimes made it a little bit harder for us to raise capital. But the best way to raise capital is to sell something for a profit, so that helps as well.
So
helps. I think, Joe, on that question though, the difference in the world today, so 3 years ago, 4 years ago, people that aren't medical people that invested were trusting the teams because we knew the medical space. But the last year, there's no one in the world that knew how to sell product in a hospital post-COVID because we've never experienced it. So I think that all of a sudden, in a sense, everyone got exposed. I think the venture capital groups got really exposed because their expectations were, I got these experts that are going to just take me through and they know exactly what's happening. And we're all sitting there learning because the hospitals are, wow, the market's changed like we've never seen it before. The rules have changed. The people have changed. There's not enough money in hospitals. So I think that put pressure on both sides, put pressure on that medical genius in the company, but also on the VCs that didn't know and were just trusting that this is going to turn profitable in no time. The market's changed, so I think those investors that take a deep breath and really trust the teams and realize this is not just this company or what have you, this is the way the business is going, I think we'll be fine. And I think, but it's really important, I think, if you're a med tech company, that you have some med tech people on your board. And I think that not even important, I think it's critical for success.
Well, I'm the poster child for that question, by the way, because all of my investors are private. They're oil people. They don't know anything about healthcare. To answer your question is, it puts the pressure on you as a CEO to educate them, get them excited more, because they're going to have to be part of the future rounds. Because the last thing you want is your initial investors not participate in the future rounds, even put more money in, but more importantly, be able to add value as a board member, right? So this is, you want to talk a tough job. I already have a tough job to run a robotic company, but then have a job of educating people who don't know ORs, you know what I mean? Never been in an OR, or they don't know anything about medical devices and things like that. So, but I will tell you, it's not any more challenging than dealing with venture capital, who thinks they know everything and wrote the book on running a company. They've never been in a clean room, never touched a tool or anything like that. So it's a CEO's job to really educate them, bring them on board, and I'm telling you, I invited them to my scientific advisory board meeting. They were smiles. They were really like listening to other surgeons, not me and my team, listening to other surgeons talk about the potential of our company and the future of our company and all the things that to come gets them excited. So you got to include them in. You got to, because the other part of it is just what other choice you have. You know what I mean? It's like and when you talk to the venture capital communities, you know, they want those guys to come in. So you know that's critical. But to Todd's point, my board has independence. I have 2 independent directors that are medical device guys and know the space, because then otherwise it just, you don't have that the dynamic you need at a board level.
And last question here for each of you. Elliot, this may or may not impact you as much as Todd and Kurt. So I think the next 3 to 4 years is going to be interesting. And in particular is selling into, where are you going to be selling into these changing centers of care? So we're watching the ASC model blow up, whether it's FemHealth, whether it's orthopedics, whether it's cardiology, whether it's ENT, we're seeing it across the board. And I personally think it's a great opportunity for companies that can't sell against large contracts. They can get a toehold into ASCs. But as CEOs, how are you thinking about your sales force with this shift to ASC and the dynamics there? Because this has not happened before. So Todd, you know, with Minerva,
Yep.
you know, you're still auditing.
Yeah.
But what are you thinking about on this?
But well, the women's health space is offices and ASCs are a critical piece of it, as well as the hospital and the operating room. But you know, the experience I had 100 years ago when I was in GI, you know, and ASCs were real big when they were physician owned. Now they're hospital owned. Big difference in the way you go about it, because you know there was a facility fee involved. Now it's just hospital owned, and the doctors, you know, they're not thinking as much on the business side all the time. Then in orthopedics, you know, that time there too, ASCs were still part of it. So the ASC game has been around. I think the smart companies, first of all, it's great to come from the CEO. The best people that we have out there are the people that are on the ground standing next to surgeons every day, those reps. And it's nice again in a sense, you know, I have 80 people out there and doing, really identifying opportunities. And one of the thoughts is, these doctors are doing procedures in their offices and they're doing procedures in their ASC. We need to make sure that we're there to support them, which will then help us to make sure that they believe in this technology and they're fighting for this technology in the hospital. Now we know that not every specialty has the same pecking order in a hospital, and GYN isn't always at the top in the space that I'm in now. But if the doctors are using something that is helping to prevent potential for hysterectomies that aren't needed or other procedures that these women face every day, and the doctors use technology in the office and get comfortable with the company, I think it's a real strategy to make sure that we are there to provide technology in the ASC and the office, and then make sure that we're continuing into the hospital. Still have to be in the hospital because surgery is being done there, you know, the surgical procedures. But I do think it's not too different of a strategy as maybe I had in GI and orthopedics. But I do think it's one that the rep, like you said, how do you focus on the sellers that are out there? They're making it part of their day, and you set up your plans and your quotas and your commission plans to reward them for going after those other opportunities, maybe more than just hanging out in the hospital and covering cases.
And Kurt, you've got a large format robot, really sort of first to market in the category coming up. You've got to be thinking about commercial strategy, and again, with all the tide changing right now, what are you considering?
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, having the experience that we've had dealing with who's your customer, right? So for me, it doesn't matter if it's a surgery center or a hospital, who's your customer, because they're different, right? But at the end, who makes a decision on a large capital acquire? It's the CEO, C-suite, right? And what does the C-suite care about? You know, better outcome, you know, faster recovery. You know, they want to be competitive. They want to be at the leading edge because they want to attract more patients. And so I think we hit all four, right? So when I came to the company, joined the company, the first thing I did is I created a platform that had multiple shots at goal. I didn't say, well, we're going to have a robot for transanal approach. Our robot can be used for transanal, transoral, transvaginal, transumbilical. So you buy a robot as an investment, now you have multiple platforms to build on top of the robot, number one. Number two, our technology is disposable, meaning you could reuse it multiple times, just like Intuitive does. So I can have those tough conversations about, hey, this procedure is costing me this much. I'm not shoving a big number down their throat. I'm going to say, well, you know what? We can work it out. We can have a per click cost. We can have so you have to know your customer. And I tell you, the single biggest thing that I learned at Verb, is dealing with CEOs of large hospital systems all over the world. Mm-hmm. From Europe is even tougher. I mean, they don't want to hear it. They're just like cost, and So I learned that, and that's something that's kind of like tattooed on my forehead or in my great. Like I have to be able to stand this up the way where I can have that conversation in the C-suite. So that's really the value you're creating, knowing your customer and knowing how to position it. I think we'll do fine. I think I can't wait. Bring it on.
I think Kurt probably says that every morning.
I haven't had my coffee yet. I haven't even had my coffee yet.
Bring it on, come on. And does it affect you, the changing centers of care of the ASCs?
It's interesting. So our mission statement at Innovis is to become the world's partner for surgical training. And so we can basically answer every single question anyone ever asks us with our mission statement, and I can answer your question as well with it, which is, for us to achieve that mission, we can't just focus on the surgical training that's going on in one part of the ecosystem. So we can't just say we're only going to sell or offer products to the residency programs and the teaching hospitals, because training does go on in ASCs. People get de-skilled. So we need to make a technology that can be focused there, but we also need to make a technology that adds value to industry. I mean, Kurt, you guys have just announced a great partnership, which is great to see. You are focusing on training. That shows how important what we do as a technology is. So partnerships with the actual training programs, the residency programs, partnerships with industry, and then partnerships with societies. So we announced a large society partnership last year in the gynae space. Really that we just keep sticking to our focus. So we're not going to get distracted by these changing tides of how care is being delivered, because we know that we've made a platform that can be applied wherever it needs to be, and it will add value there and allow us to keep working towards our mission.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. I mean, I really appreciate it. This is always one of my favorites is talking about the different dynamics. And we were talking last night before we closed out. I was chatting with somebody. We went back to the old Leon days on US Surge, and Todd, you running that same sort of back in the BSC days, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so there's nothing like the old school sales, the old school approach. And I'm seeing analog devices start to come back in as well. That digital thing has got a little bit of a pause on it, but I'm starting to see more analog come in, more sensors on board, more data that we can actually put to use right away. So I'm excited for it. Appreciate it. You guys enjoy the weekend and stay well. And it's a little cool out here, not like Houston where it's humid, but I'll take this all day.
This is nice.
Thanks.
Thank you, Joe.
Our pleasure. Pleasure.
I'm Joe Mullings from Sagis. Next big thing, SDTS. Be well.